Like I mentioned, all these shells are installed in your system. So if you want to use a particular shell, what you can do is you can just fire in the shell, the identifier of the shell. So for example, I want to use the sh shell, which is the bone shell. So I just fire in the sh command, and you are now in the bone shell. So you can use the echo $0, and it tells you that I'm in the bone shell. So $0 is basically a system variable. We'll be covering environment or system variables later in our videos. So this $0 contains the value of the shell, which shell you are using. To exit this shell, now because we are in the sh shell, so we just fire in the exit and you go back to your bash shell. So you can just check it one more time. So I'm really in the bash shell. If you want to use the Z shell, ZSH, which I was mentioning before, you just type in ZSH and then you are in the Z shell. So as you can see, the Z shell has a bunch of nice colorful graphics that you can use, and it has a bunch of more code completion features. Like for example, if you want to move between directories like CD, and say if I press in D like we were doing before, and let's press tab. So what it shows is it shows the options of the directories that you can go into. But if you press in tab again, so what you can see is it can navigate. Using the tab, you can navigate and select which directory you can go into and enter. And if you type in again, you can go into the directory. In the same way, these are some cool features of the Z shell. Like for example, if you want to go to the users folder, say I go into users and then subdirectories sab, and then type in tab again, and it will show you two options, and you can navigate by using the tab button. So this is some cool features of the Z shell. So I have added a few more commands and how to change your default shell in this in the documentation section. However, we will not go into those details for now. Let's ignore that for now. And one thing that we have learned is that when you are working with shell, tab can be a very important key that you can familiarize yourself with. So you will see that the usage of tab will be very helpful, and it can reduce a lot of writing in our shells. Another thing to note is that when you log in into a terminal, it comes up with some text and the command prompt. So let's understand what this text means. So in this case, you see it's called Fermi at the rate tserv. So what this basically means that your user name is Fermi. So in this shell environment, you are logged in as the user Fermi, and the at the rate tserv, this is basically the host or the machine name. It can be a text, it can be an IP address, it can be a web address, depending on what is the name of your machine. And then there is a colon. This is basically a separator, and after the colon you have a tilde sign. A tilde sign is basically the key left to one. So this tilde sign is a symbol that identifies the home. So every user, when you log in, has a home directory, and that is identified as the tilde sign. And after that tilde sign, there's a dollar. Dollar refers to as the prompt, which tells you that you can write something after this. So this home directory, or this tilde sign, tells you that right now you are in the home directory. So you can press a pwd command, which tells you where this home directory is. And as you navigate into some other folder, say I went to the users folder, so you can see the path changed. So right now you are in the home/users directory. So you can fire in the pwd command. So in the previously, when we ran pwd from home, it showed me home for me. And now in this directory, when you ran pwd, it shows home for me users. So this is correct, that this is the path to your working directory wherever you are. So just by reading the text which is there in the prompt, you can tell which directory you are in your file system. A few more things that I want to cover in this tutorial is the directory structure of the Unix or the Linux type environment. So let's go back to home, and then when you fire a pwd command, which tells you which directory you are, so this is basically the home of this user called for me. So you might wonder what this user home is. So basically, if you look at Windows type environment, so there is a folder called users in even in home. So each user has a directory. So if you go to Windows C drive, and you will find a users folder, and inside that you will have all the list of the users that have an account on this computer. So right now my account name is Tiali, and if you go inside this folder, then you have access to all the folders that are there for me. And I have a desktop, you can see downloads. These are same as the shortcut that I have on the left, the documents and the downloads on the desktop. So all of this is contained inside this users my username directory. And even my documents and my pictures, my my videos, everything is here. In the same way, if you go one level up the users, I have other users which have their account on this computer, and they also have something similar to mine. They have their own my documents, my music, and all their customized subfolders. So so basically, when you log in into I directly go into my user directory, and inside that I put all my work. This is very similar, even in a Linux type environment. Every user has a home, and if you want to look at what other users are there in this home directory, so what to do is to fire up a cd command and go one level up, so dot dot, and then I do a ls. So when you do an ls, then you see that I was basically in this folder. This was my home directory, but there are other folders or other directories of other users, and these are their respective homes, you see. And if you want to look into more detail, so I fire an ls-l. This is a list format, and you can see that this for me, this is my home, and I am the user. So the user is for me, and then the lost and found and the Toshif. This user has permission, and his directory has its own permission. So this belongs to this Toshif. And then there is another user called Zeus, and this is his directory, and his username. He owns this directory. That's why it shows up as his user as well as group. Let's go back to our home folder. I'll just fire in a cd command, and we are back in the home. Just check. One more thing I forgot to mention is the permissions that are there on these folders. So permissions are a big deal in a Linux or Unix type environment. This permission structure is the whole foundation of security of a Linux or Unix environment. And this permission structure is defined by these characters. So basically, what these mean is this D means directory, RWX, it means read, write, and execute. And there will be a total of 10 characters in this permission line, which states the permission. And the first four, or the first four, belongs to the current user or the user to which this directory belongs to. Like for example, in this case, this is Toshif. And then the second three characters belongs to the group or the group of user. In this case, this is also Toshif. And the last three characters belong to the other users. So in this case, if I'm looking at this directory, which doesn't belong to me, then I will fall into the last category, read, write, and execute. And what it also means is that I can read this directory, which means I can cd into this directory and look at the file contents. So I can, or let's go back. So right now I am in home directory. Let's look at ls-l. So right now I am at home. So I have these directories. I can cd into the Toshif directory, and it is allowing me to do that. And I can see inside, because in this directory there is a read permission. So that's why I can go into the directory. And let's go back, and let's look at the other directories that are there. So I can see there is a directory called lost and found, and only the root has permission to even read this directory. So even if I try to go into the directory, I think it will give me a permission error. So let's try lost and found. See, permission denied. The reason is it doesn't have any read access to this directory. Only the root user can access the directory. That's why the